What is the difference between spending 8 hours on your phone after 8 hours of work and literal slavery? Right, you wake up and do what someone else tells you to do for 8 hours, then you get home and you do what an algorithm tells you to look at for another 8 hours. You didn't actually choose any of it, none of it was intentional. 1,000 engineers designed your phone to be as addictive as possible, and you think that you're relaxing. I used to be in this state, right? I used to get home every day after work and scroll for like 3 or 4 hours or watch YouTube videos or play some video games, vape the whole time, gamble if there was football on, sometimes even just roulette, right? It was pathetic. And all that time I thought it was relaxing. I thought it was like a vice and it was helping me and it was just something that I could lean on when times were tough. None of that is relaxing. It's addictive for a reason, and it's like intended to harm people so that companies can make profit. So the question really that we need to be asking as a society is how did we get here? Because humans have been around for 300,000 years now and more than that. But for 300,000 years, we were in the Stone Age, right? Sharp rocks was the greatest technology that we have. There was no upwards momentum. And then the Bronze Age was only I think like 5,000 years ago now, something on that sort of time scale. It was then when everything started accelerating beyond what we could keep up with. We got bronze, and then we got metal, and then we got technology, and then we got phones, planes, and now we have AI, right? Every single tool, when we created them, used to come with a story. So when we invented fire, we invented religion around fire. We invented the idea of sort of devils, and all of that was stories about get too close to fire, and you will get hurt. But harness it, and it will help you live longer. The same thing for any technology, right? Swords. When we created swords and weapons, we needed warrior culture. We needed like honor and virtue and knights, right? These were all fundamentally religious things because to be more dangerous, you must have more self control. And it's all religious and it's all art, right? Think about the idea of martial arts, right? War and fighting as an art form, because as we know, art is trying to get closer to the divine. And so dangerousness, formidability is closer to a divine level of virtue. And so to harness it properly, there needs to be some artistic element. Your brain stores knowledge as narratives, right? We use stories to transmit experience to other people. That's the human superpower, right? We can use our empathy to learn from other people's experience without having to experience it ourselves. That's why we have stories, right? If I created a story about how there were some boys playing on a slippery cliff edge and then some sort of demon came and blew them into the sea, right? That story is the same. That story is what evolves out of one original experience of some boys that slipped and died near a cliff. But when you don't have writing, when you don't have video, and you don't have proof of things, you have to pass down stories to teach other people not to do the same thing. And other animals, because they don't have the communication we do, they can't do it. So they just keep dying. They keep slipping near cliffs. And the only way that they can evolve is by baking that into their genetics and their biology not to do it. That's why they all run completely on instinct. And we have those same instincts, but they haven't evolved with our times. So we now have things more dangerous than playing near cliffs and fire that are baked into our biology. We have fucking AI and swords and weapons and tools that are beyond what our bodies are capable of. So we need some sort of framework for how to use them. And all throughout history, every tool we created, that framework was religious in nature. The thing that we're using now is some blend, if you're locked in, it's some blend of ancient wisdom, of religion and modern science, right? That's the new faith. We listen to people who know the answers themselves, and instead of wearing white robes, they wear white lab coats, right? And they tell us, have faith, trust the science. We have the answers and we're relaying them down to you. But at some point, there is a leap of faith, right? We can't read every study ourselves. So we need to have some people that we believe in. And that's the same thing with any religion. It starts with faith. And if you follow it far enough, then you understand the thing that you're having faith in and you don't need the faith anymore. We need to create some sort of framework that's a blend of the things that we already know for situations that are old right? Relationships, society, playing with fire, things like that. We need to extend that into a new moral framework that includes stories to deal with things that we have now. And that's what I think that's what the focus of self-improvement and philosophy in the modern age is. That's what all these podcast bros are getting closer to, and that's what I'm trying to get closer to. Religion is the biggest collection of stories that's ever been assembled, and we need to keep adding to it, right? Or at least reframing it in relatable uh clothes, relatable format. That's why Christianity, if you look at all the paintings and art from Christianity as it progressed, Jesus was always wearing the clothes of the time of the painter, right? He wasn't stuck in history. It evolved because the idea, the construct behind it needs to have evolved with the times of the people, because the lessons transmit through relatability and empathy. So if you can't relate to the stories, then they seem like just old fashioned sort of wizard man in the sky nonsense. We need some way of framing these ancient ideas to exist in the same time as TikTok and, AI and 6 7. Like, that's why they feel unrelatable to us. That's why they don't work on people. And so we need to reframe it. If you follow the stories of religion all the way back, right, past the Bible, past any writing itself, stories were transmitted through people, right? They spread like genes. The useful ones would spread and the weak ones would die. And if you go all the way back, the fundamental thing that we're trying to do with religion is to take stories that we have and pass them down more effectively. And when you distill stories to just certain ideas, that's when you have a single virtue at the top. So you think about Stonehenge or the pyramids, right? This is in times where people couldn't write well enough to transmit their ideas back down. And I'm not talking about pyramids in Egypt. There's pyramids all over the world. Everyone's sort of converged to this idea of something of like a hierarchical structure that extends from a wide base and points up towards a single idea. That's the same idea as the Bible, right? It's or any religion where they converge on monotheism. It's we have humans and everything at the bottom, and then one thing that unites them at the top, and that's what we're aiming at. And pyramids do the exact same thing as any religion, which is point you towards the top. So the same with Stonehenge, right? This is times when they couldn't write, so they had to build something so massive it couldn't be ignored. The same message of any religion, the fundamental idea of passing down knowledge for future generations, that is what Stonehenge is. And so that's why there's mystery and spirituality around it, because we have to ask, what were they trying to tell us? But the thing is, every religion converges, right? What I was talking about with tools before, early spirituality all started as celebration and consumption and revelry, right? That sort of Dionysian go off in a cave and get drunk and just go insane. But as civilization got more comfortable and there was more abundance, we shifted away from that revelry in towards modesty and resisting temptation and self-control. Every religion that survives long enough ends up pointing at self-control, right? Meditation as the highest virtue, being okay with needing nothing. And that's because the more that we have around us, the more the difficulty is resisting it and finding ways to use it without letting it use us. Like if you have your phone and you use it as a tool, it will massively increase your chances of success in pretty much every domain, right? Making money, status, communication. But if you use it the wrong way, if you don't use it as a tool and you let it use you, if you have no moral framework to guide you, you become an addict and a follower and a consumer. And it's the same idea with that's why it's the highest virtue, to be able to use the most dangerous thing and force it to your will, to be able to use the most impressive tool in the way that you want and not have it use you. So every religion converges, right? I went on a bit of a tangent there. Every religion converges on the same stories. And stories, I said before, evolve like genes, the same like natural selection, because the only reason that you would tell a story to a younger generation is because you like that story. And why do we like that story? It's because of taste, right? Taste in art is the same as taste in food. I've said this many times before. but we can select for nutritional value in food based on taste that only our subconscious recognizes. In the same way, we use taste to select in art useful stories and messages that help us survive, right? Everything's about increasing our survivability. So the stories that we decide to keep and internalize and pass on are the most useful ones. And they're instruction manuals, right? A story is saying, if you do this, if you play near the cliff, you will fall. And so we pass those instruction manuals down. But there's these same story constructs that evolve in pretty much every culture. And it's called The Hero's Journey by Joseph Campbell, right? He identified this pattern of it's all the stories, you know. It's someone in their comfortable house gets called to action by an older mentor, and then they face their first fear, they cross a threshold, and maybe they meet their first sort of bad guy, just like a little henchman thing, and then they conquer that, and then they go all the way up until they face the greatest bad, and then they come back from that hell. They come back in like an enlightened state, and they go back to their comfortable life, but with a new appreciation for life. That template is not something that someone invented. It's a pattern that emerged because human growth actually looks like that. It's this Jungian idea of confronting the thing within you that you're most afraid of being the thing that you most need to do. Like, that's the story that everyone comes to. That's why all religions pretty much point to the same ideas. Like, every religion has a flood myth where the noble person protects everyone else from an impending doom by warning them and preparing and, looking after his family. A society that doesn't have these shared instructions will collapse. That's why the ones that survive all have the same stories, at least to some degree. They're the only ones that work to survive, and that's why they can be slightly different. Some places in the world you need different strategies to survive. Religion only needs to exist if we're out of our natural habitat, right? A wolf doesn't need a belief system because the environment will provide the structure that it needs. It doesn't need purpose or community. It doesn't need those externally because it has like hunting and being in a pack. Those are built into it. And we used to have that as humans ourselves. We obviously have a natural habitat. We are animals. But when we built civilizations, we decided to step out of that. And so religion was the first technology to replace it. We don't have scarcity anymore, so we need to manufacture it with fasting. We need to get that instinct back. We don't have stillness and moments of sort of quiet reflection now, so we need prayer and meditation. And worshipping as a community, we need that to replace the tribal bonding that we used to have, like around a campfire, right? So if religion is the instruction manual that your ancestors left you, and stories are the delivery system of those instructions, and every civilization that's ever worked has had both, what is the thing that all these stories are pointing at? Now, this is a question that's polarizing to people, and probably a lot of people have stopped listening already because when they hear me talk about God and religion, they have so much baked into that. They have so much behind it, so much baggage that they can't be objective about what it means. And we're not even gonna talk about it. Just listen, okay? Try and have an open mind. God is the thing that links together all the stories you believe in, right? In the Bible, God is the thing that you walk with when you're in a beautiful garden. God can be the thing that calls you to sacrifice the thing you hold greatest. God can be the man that sacrifices himself for you. God can be the thing that brings people back from the dead or forgives people. It takes all these different forms, right? And the thing that they're all pointing at that you can't really define, that is God, the highest virtue, the thing at the top of the pyramid. And because we can't define it in one word or in even a whole book, the best way we can do it is by creating all of these stories and thinking, what is the one idea that links them together? What's the one thing that leads people to a good life, to enlightenment, to surviving longer and prosperous lives for their children? That's what God is in every religion, and it can be distorted and turned into false idols of money or status. They're all saying the same thing. Here's an experiment, right? Gather up every film that you've ever loved, every book that ever changed how you think, or every story that stuck with you for years, right? Your favorite ones. and try and define what the moral is of each story, right? What's it trying to tell you? What's the lesson within it? And then look for the thing that links all those morals together. That thing, the higher pattern that they all share, by definition, that is God. It's the thing that you believe in most, the thing that activates you most. So how can you say you don't believe in it? I think asking someone if they believe in God or if they are religious, it doesn't it's not a real question, right? There's that sort of Jordan Peterson meme where he's like, well, define what you mean by believe. I get what he's saying. Okay, I'm not religious, I wasn't raised anything, but when I actually sat down and traced the thread through everything that I care about, right? Technology, martial arts, literature, the stories that move me, everything's pointing to the same thing. And God is by definition what links together all which we consider good. It's in us the whole time. That's what people are trying to tell you. They're not trying to say that there's really a man in the sky. And if they are, that's just blind faith. And that's okay because they're pointing towards the same thing that you can eventually understand. So, art is the medium of leaving behind lessons through empathy, right? That's why it activates something in you. Even if you don't know what it's pointing at, you feel something when you look at it. So, it's not decoration or entertainment. And the most rudimentary form is Stonehenge. The most advanced one is the Bible. The tools then got so sophisticated that the old stories stopped applying. So, stay with me now. Love is a story about farming. Before agriculture, all relationships were functional. If you've ever seen how animals interact with each other in the wild, it's it's reciprocal, it's aggressive, and it's always grounded in the present. The only thing that helps them think for the future is their instincts, right? They're only guided by, if I procreate with this person, what will the future look like? And it's all instinct. They can't actually plan it out. And so love itself is what we shifted to when we moved out of the wild and into farming, when we learn to cultivate and nurture something over time, when we learn to sacrifice our instincts in the moment for future yield, that is farming. So that's why religion points to love and working together and nurturing, because we evolved it to deal with the new technology of farming, right? The Garden of Eden is what life looks like when you stop being a painting, when you stop being a predator and you start being a gardener, right? It's when you move from attack into nurture. So that's why all animals live in peace there. Predators and prey, man and woman, man and animal can all live in harmony because there is no need to attack when abundance is everywhere and when everything has the knowledge that they can just take advantage of that abundance instead of hunting and taking. But then the idea of the Garden of Eden, right? We ate from the tree of knowledge and gained self-awareness and we got kicked out. That's because once you're conscious, you have to choose, and it's in choice that we suffer. Choosing is where suffering comes from, but it's also where meaning comes from. That's why ascent always is always preceded by some suffering. That's why every saint was made through some suffering or, dying some horrific death. So the truth hasn't changed, but the packaging needs to update or people won't absorb it. It's difficult to hear someone talk about the biblical stories and to not think of it as outdated because a lot of it is outdated. But we need to write these same stories. We need to notice the same virtues that all these stories point to and realize that we're still pointing at the same thing. We just tell it in the form of, like a Marvel film or something. So if stories are the medium and God is what they all point at, what do the oldest surviving stories actually teach? Right? The Bible is the most replicated text in human history. Something in it was useful enough that it survived longer than anything else, right? The stories within it, there's something in there, right? You can't dismiss them. That's just intellectual laziness. Now, Richard Dawkins coined the term meme as a unit of cultural information that replicates. And you've probably heard it before, well, you've definitely heard it before in the context of the internet, right? Ideas that we can't really define, like, what is that? What is that idea that's spreading? That's a meme. And the Bible is the most successful meme ever. So it's traveled the furthest. People have decided to replicate it and share it the most. So what is a meme pointing to, right? What is a story and what is truth? How could these stories be true Or what would these stories have to be true about to survive for 3,000 years? I'm going to ask you to stay with me again, right? I'm going to talk about Harry Potter because it's a work of fiction that most people are familiar with. If I say that Harry Potter died and came back to life, am I lying? Like, it didn't happen in reality, but it's still true. We store knowledge in stories. That's why we have this concept of a cautionary tale or the moral of the story. We think that fiction is the opposite of truth, but that's not really how stories work. They exist to guide attention. So empathy lets us learn from other people's experience without having to go through those experiences ourselves or see them ourselves. It's a human superpower, and religion is the greatest collection of those stories that we've ever assembled. It's 3,000 years of survival wisdom, and it includes all the stories that we told around campfires for the 300,000 years before that. It's encoded in narrative, and it doesn't matter if you're religious, because as I said, I'm not in the way that you mean. Just don't confuse fiction with false, right? We're going to talk about Genesis. God creates the world by speaking. Naming the world, saying what he will do, creates order from the chaos. God said, "Let there be light." He didn't create light. He said, "Let there be light." And this is an idea we're going to link back to self-improvement now. When you name your problem, when you identify it, it becomes smaller. This is it, right? It's like Voldemort, right? Back to Harry Potter. When you refuse to name something, you let it grow in darkness. But when you have the confidence, when you have the bravery to say, "Look, this is what I want to defeat," then it gets smaller. So when you were scrolling for 8 hours a day and you called it relaxing, the second you say, "I'm addicted to my phone," when you say it out loud, that's when it has lost its grip. That's when you say, "Let there be not slop anymore." That's Genesis, right? And the fall, Adam and Eve gain knowledge and lose paradise because you can't be innocent and conscious. The price of knowing is suffering. That's why ignorance is bliss, right? Imagine there's a massive boulder rolling towards you and it's behind you and you're not facing it and you're choosing to ignore it. And until that boulder hits you, yeah, you're happy. But it's going to hit you. And it's the same thing, right? You can choose to ignore all of the data that we have on how bad scrolling is for you and how it's destroying your mind. But eventually it's going to catch up, right? Eventually you're going to die faster than someone else. You're going to get dementia or your brain isn't going to work as well as it would. And it's going to be your fault, and ignorance won't be bliss anymore. So ignorance is bliss, but a temporary bliss. The day that you start paying attention to how you are living is the day that you lose the ability to be comfortable with it. And that's what the fall is. That's what eating the fruit of the tree of knowledge is. You'll take painful awareness over comfortable blindness every time. Uh, Another story, Exodus, right? The book of Exodus is about you. 3,000 years ago, someone wrote a story about people who choose slavery over freedom because the desert was scarier than the prison. And I don't care if you're religious, that story is about you. Think about whatever you know that you should leave right now, the job or relationship, the thing that feels like slavery. You know that you should go, but you stay because you know what tomorrow looks like. It's comfortable for you. But here's the part that people miss, right? Moses did not lead the Israelites out of slavery into paradise. He led them into 40 years of wandering the desert. And that's what freedom actually looks like, right? It's not this ignorance is bliss, it's this knowledge is suffering. It's not better at first, it's worse. And that's why most people go back, right? I've had to go through this myself. When you quit that scrolling and vaping, it's hard, it's withdrawal, and you don't know where to go. When you decide with your evenings to not spend them sat in front of the TV anymore, that first question that pops up into your head is, well, what am I supposed to do instead? And you have to sit with that boredom, and it's painful. But that's the desert. You have two options, and they're both going to be painful. You can pick the pain of confronting yourself and taking action, or the pain of regret. And most people pick that pain of regret because it's familiar. There's Cain and Abel as well, right? Both make offerings, and God accepts Abel but rejects Cain. And Cain is so jealous of Abel's success that he murders Abel. He murders his own brother. And that's excuse me. That's in the Bible, and it's one of the most true things ever written, because when we see people chase a dream, we have only two options. I've talked about this on my TikTok a lot. We can accept that we're jealous, or we can resign to judgment. And most people pick judgment because it's easier for them. Every comment section is a like world full of Canes, people who see someone trying and they can't handle it because it reminds them that they are not. You have Cain in you. I have it in me. Everyone does. The question is about which option you decide to pick. Now, resentment is the most dangerous emotion that you have. It's slow, and it's like regret. You don't notice it building while it's happening. But what Genesis says is name the chaos, and the fall says knowledge costs your comfort. Exodus says freedom is harder than slavery. Cain and Abel say don't destroy what you can't match, right? All of these metaphors, these patterns are not uh they're not just random narratives. They're instincts built into your brain, called archetypes, right? Well, Jung called them archetypes. The hero or the shadow, the sort of wise old man. It's why all these great stories work. It's why Star Wars is the same as Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings. All these fantasy stories, they all follow the same pattern, and it's archetypes that you recognize whether you like it or not. That's why they spread. So the shadow is the most important one. Everything about yourself that you refuse to acknowledge, the laziness that you pretend that isn't there, or the jealousy that you sort of rebrand in your head as like standards. What you refuse to face goes underground and controls you from there, and it's only from recognizing it that you can fix it. Jung said a tree cannot reach heaven unless its roots reach hell. And I think most people hear that and think it sounds nice, but they don't actually want to do it. Because reaching hell obviously means that you have to look at the parts of yourself that you've been hiding from. The jealousy and laziness, the resentment and fear. You can't grow upwards without ever going down first. So every person I've genuinely seen change their life, including me, had to go through a dark period first of confrontation. And it's not because life gets harder, it's when you stop lying to yourself about what was already there. It's not something new, it's integration. Jung called it shadow work. And it's the most important journey you'll ever take, and also the most painful. You can't kill your shadow. You have to acknowledge it and name it. It's Genesis again, right? It's naming things to create them. You have to face the part of you that genuinely wants the cookies and the scrolling and the vaping. It isn't weakness, but it's an impulse that's protecting you from growth. And once you say, yeah, there's part of me that wants to stay comfortable and doesn't want, it's trying to help me, it's trying to survive, it's trying to get more calories in, it's trying to help me, but it wants to stay comfortable. And when you name it, it loses its power. And that's what integration is. It's recognizing that within yourself. And then the subconscious and the conscious mind, the monkey brain and the human brain, they can align. Now, I mean, it's all. I'm not. I'm gonna try not to talk about Harry Potter too much, but think about it, right? The big reveal in the last film. Spoiler alert! If you're, fucking weird and you haven't watched Harry Potter, Voldemort is inside him the whole time, right? He is the last Horcrux, the shadow within him. He finds it in himself when he decides to go, and he says, "I'm willing to die. I'm willing to go to the underworld and come back transformed." And as the second that he makes that decision, he can see the weakness inside him. He can immediately see the shadow that's within him that people refuse to name, and then it's defeated. That's how you defeat it. That's what the story is. That's why it's like the, I think, second most popular book after the Bible ever told, because it's the same ideas, right? We don't pick what's popular. It's not some random, it's not even intentional. Like J.K. Rowling, I don't know what she was up to, but she did not intentionally write this like biblical myth. It's just what happens to become popular is the thing closest to these ideas. The most important detail is that everyone refuses to say Voldemort's name, he who must not be named. And Dumbledore says fear of a name increases fear of the thing itself. That's Carl Jung written into a children's book unintentionally by the author. What you refuse to name will grow in the dark. It's the addictions or the problems that you won't call addictions or say out loud, the parts of yourself you pretend that don't exist. It doesn't go away because you stop saying it, it gets stronger. And then Harry has to walk into a forest and choose to die. But then he comes back, right? You don't fight your shadow or beat it. You face it and name it. And then you let the part of you that's been hiding you finally look at it, and that's how it loses its power. This is the same pattern, by the way. Jesus, right? The resurrection, Osiris, every great myth. This, I'll try and remember the Nietzsche quote. Transformation requires the death of your old self, which is terrifying. But how could you expect to come back reborn without pain, without suffering? Man cannot remake himself without suffering, for he is both the marble and the sculptor. It's always going to be painful, but that's the only way forward. If you don't give yourself a hero to follow, your brain is going to find one. And I've been thinking about this sort of manosphere, Andrew Tate nonsense, right? It's the hero archetype, but without the shadow integration, without the sacrifice or the transformation. It's just someone that says, I'm a hero, I'm strong, I'm integrated, but hasn't done it. It's a myth without the death and rebirth. And it feels like wisdom because the structure is familiar, right? The same as like a Marvel film mimics the structure of a myth, but it doesn't have that same meat underneath. It doesn't have the same intellectual nutrition underneath. It's this hijacked pattern. I've talked about this many times, so I won't talk about it too much. But where, sweet taste is mimicking ripe fruit, which means survival. And now we have engineered sugar and McDonald's, and it's making us obese. The same with, sexual attraction. It used to be a real partner and procreation, so you would be driven towards it. But now that we have, infinite porn, there's a crisis with intimacy and people aren't having sex anymore. When you need to recognize the things mimicking what your instincts want, and that ultimate self-control is how you use them for good instead of get defeated by them. Like the 20-year time frame that we've had smartphones now, it's experimental, right? And we're looking at the experiment and seeing that it's failed, but our instincts still want the thing. It's always going to be our conscious mind that has to step up and say, no, the data says no, so we can't do it. It's never going to work that suddenly someone else will take it away from you, or suddenly you get enough motivation and discipline that you don't want it anymore. It has to be an override and an integration of your conscious and subconscious mind. For 200,000 years, we sat around fires and we told stories, right? The stories taught us how to hunt, how to behave, who to trust, what to fear, and how to die well. Now, think about that concept, right? To die well, to go to Valhalla, to die a warrior's death. The good stories survived and they spread on their own because our brains could detect the truth inside them. And now when we sit around with screens and we consume content that was selected for engagement, right, by an algorithm, it doesn't select for the same truth. And when the algorithm doesn't care if you learn anything. It just wants you to keep watching. So it's giving you fake value signals. It's giving you stories that mimic myths but don't have the same value behind them. It's the junk food version of like telling stories around a campfire. Another story, right? In 1973, this guy won a Nobel Prize for showing that birds will abandon their own eggs for painted wooden ones because the fake eggs were bigger and brighter and their brains couldn't tell the difference. Now, they're wired to respond to the signal. So when the fake signal is stronger, they go and sit on wooden eggs and they wonder why nothing's hatching. That's you right now. That's us. We have our phones and our food and our content. We're sitting on wooden eggs. And AI is the next stage. It's going to paint those eggs even brighter and make the signal even stronger. There's this other classic experiment where they gave a monkey a lever that delivered dopamine straight to its brain. The monkey pressed it until it died, right? It didn't eat or sleep or do anything else. It doesn't care about its survival when we override its instincts. It just pulled the lever. And we're building ourselves the best lever that's ever been invented and thinking that it's progress. AI is not a tool, it's the lever. And the scary part is that it feels like it's helping us because it can if we have that moral framework to use it properly. All these previous hijacks, right? The food, the scrolling, they hijack one signal generally. But AI is going to hijack all of them simultaneously. It takes your very identity. Most people define themselves by what they do, what they can do. AI is going to replace your usefulness. So, what are you underneath? What's your identity underneath? We don't even need companionship anymore, right? We're going to simulate friendship with AI. We're going to simulate myth with AI. We're going to like do jobs and do work, productivity with AI. It's the zoo thesis from the last episode. Um, AI is the comfortable cage that we're building because it doesn't feel like a cage. It's going to give us everything that our subconscious mind wants at our fingertips, but our conscious mind doesn't want that. We our monkey brain wants food delivered to us all the time. It wants permanent abundance, but we can realize from the data, from our moral frameworks, that actually, if we fast and meditate and practice self-control and resistance, our lives will be better. So we have to be able to override it, and AI is like the culmination of that ultimate thing that we need to resist, that ultimate tool that we can take advantage of if we have the moral framework around it. But it's the same thing as social media, right? Social media is a drug dealer on the corner. You have to go to it and you pull out your phone, you open the app and you start scrolling. There's like friction behind it, right? AI is the same thing, but it's like a drug dealer that lives in your house. It knows your schedule. It has like a PhD in neuroscience, and it's a personalized attack on you every time. Social media, you have to go to it. You have to at least open your phone. But AI is targeting you from the outside, and it's mimicking whatever you want most, right? Some people use it as a friend or like a therapist. It feels like it's helping you. And that's why it's more dangerous than anything else that we've had to face before. You've probably caught yourself talking to AI like it's a person, right? I'm a professional software engineer, and people sit next to me and say please and thank you to it. You are so cooked. Like, the moment it feels like a relationship, you've crossed the line and you've lost. You've stopped using it as a tool and you've become tricked. We've got this conscious mind and the monkey brain, and every company, every slot company, casinos, McDonald's, the AI, it's all trying to trick the monkey brain. And all of these traditions and rituals give the conscious mind the tools that it needs to override it. But AI doesn't just trick the monkey brain anymore. It's replacing the conscious mind. So the only thing left is monkey brain plus AI. That's what the Matrix is, right? You're going to be plugged into this all day long. You're going to have nothing to do. And who are you at that point? When you stop thinking because AI thinks for you, you lose the only weapon you had. Um, I'm a software engineer, okay? If you don't know that, I use AI every single day, and I'm not anti-technology. If you've listened to this 35 minutes so far, you know that I want to use the greatest tools, but what I see has worried me. When I can get an answer in 5 seconds, I stop trying to figure things out on my own. And the way that most people use AI is asking it questions, right? You think of ChatGPT, the web interface, and question ask and question answered, like Google, right? Like, it's just a better Google, and sometimes it gets things wrong, so it's not that good. That isn't the AI that's going to replace you, right? I'm not going to talk too much about my work, but if you're doing like an office job right now and you use the computer in any way, I could replace your job and get you fired if I spent like one day and a couple $100 in tokens, and you'll be gone. Like, it's already happening to people in the to people in industries near to software engineering, because they're the first to be replaced. We're coming for you. Like, I'm not going to do it because I don't want to do that, but there are people that are going to use this tool to replace the productivity that you provide and to give you nothing in exchange. Like, you need an identity underneath it, because you cannot compete when the machine has scaled past what you're capable of thinking. It's the idea of the Matrix, right? We have this fake world that people live in, and when you come out, when you sort of wake up, you look around and you see that everyone's plugged into this thing, and the real world is it's a conflict with machines that humans built, right? That's the idea of the Matrix. It's Deus Ex Machina. If you've seen Ex Machina, it's a great film as well. It's the same idea. Religion is scales with technology. It's a tension between the most dangerous thing we have and the instructions that we need to use it. And God is the instructions for the machine. So when we have the ultimate machine, when we have a machine that is knowledge itself, it is thinking and processing itself, we need religion and moral framework to understand it. The more complex that tools get, the more specific the rules have to be to use them properly. To use rocks, you need to understand rock religion, right? To use swords, you need to understand sword religion. Every great tool came with a corresponding set of instructions, and AI is the highest tool that humanity has ever built. We have no religion for it, no shared moral framework, no stories teaching people how to use it without destroying themselves. The highest tool requires the highest rule, and we haven't written it yet. So that's what I'm trying to do here, and that's what a lot of other people are trying to do if you listen to them, right? If you listen to that, I think it's the Anthropic safety lead, the people who make Claude, which is pretty much what every software engineer uses to code now. The safety lead quit and said the world is in grave danger. Like, why are you ignoring this? This is going to be the biggest thing that happens to us. The Industrial Revolution was real. That actually happened, that people got pulled out of their jobs and in the mines and farming. Like, it actually did get replaced and people died. There was conflict. It will happen. So you need an identity underneath when your usefulness is replaced. Brian Johnson, right? The guy trying to live forever, don't die. There are memes around him, but I respect him so much. And it's been since I read his sort of manifesto that I have gained that respect. But there's this question I can't get out of my head, right? What is the point of living forever if AI removes everything that makes life worth living, right? The struggle and effort and fear and growth, these are not obstacles on the way to the good, to like a good life. Like, it's not like work is the thing in the way of your retirement where you can finally live your good life. They are the good life. If you lived forever but you had nothing hard to do, you wouldn't really be alive. You'd just be existing, and that's what the Matrix is. It's what our generation is doing right now. When people stop engaging with deep stories, they still need meaning. So they find it in like politics and TV shows, fandoms, right? Conspiracy theories or cults, degraded myths, things that have the structure of a story but without the wisdom underneath it. Like, you need someone to hate without being asked to change. A real myth puts you on trial. It uses empathy to make you the subject that must handle the struggle in front of you. A fake myth puts someone else on trial, right? It's pointing fingers, it's saying this guy's the bad guy, this guy's the devil. Most people cannot tell the difference. So every culture had a rite of passage, right? A bar mitzvah or like a confirmation, a walkabout. If you Google that, if you don't know what that is, vision quest. Facing something difficult and proving that you can handle it is how you're welcomed into adulthood. But we've got rid of all of them, and we wonder why young men are lost, right? Young men are lost because there are no old men. There are no adult human males in our society anymore. You look at testosterone rates, like physiologically, the UK. Go outside. Look at your dad. Look at the grown men in society, not the ones you see on TikTok with the big muscles and stuff. Like, this is a culture where people have been diluted and made so weak that we have nothing to look up to anymore. And that's why we're so lost. That's why we need to turn back to the stories of real men to find our purpose again. Because if you look up to the people now, if you want, look up to them if you want to end up like them. That's all I'm going to say on that. So this slop and these fake myths, like Andrew Tate, right, is one of them. They mimic a rite of passage. They say, do these things and then you'll be a man. And it uses ideas, it uses archetypes that you'll recognize as real. It'll show you strength, and you'll say, oh, strength, I know that that's good. And so you'll follow this and you'll listen to it. These are the fake eggs, right? These are the bright and more appealing things that your instincts want to follow and think is real, but they're empty behind it. It's that excess that you're being sold is the opposite of what ancient civilizations built like fasting and meditation and prayer as defenses against the impulse, right? We abandoned all of them, but we're facing 1,000 times more temptation. Um, yeah, I mean, I talked about it before, right? What is a martial art, right? The art of war. Discipline and philosophy is wrapped around violence. The art part is the religion part, right? Without it, it's just fighting. Art and religion are the same thing. Um, when someone says have faith, it only sounds sort of patronizing until you understand it, because you will not get it if you choose not to believe it. Like, whatever you decide to think, you will think that. And so, if you try to understand religion without having faith, or without understanding that there's some utility within it, you'll never get it, right? It's like Santa. And I know that it sort of sounds weird, but hear me out for a sec, right? When you're a kid, you have to have faith. If you're good, you get presents, and you don't understand the mechanism. You don't know why it works. You just trust the process. And then one day you get smart enough or old enough and you understand why the rules exist. You see the whole system for what it is. And what do? You keep doing it for your younger siblings, right? And you do the same for your kids when you have them. For the people who haven't figured it out yet, those are the people that need faith. And religion works the same way. If you have faith that these instructions work, if you follow them even when you don't understand why, eventually it will click. And then you turn around and you help the next person. And that's why everyone that's religious is trying to say, everyone that's religious in a good way is saying, have faith, like follow me, trust me, like do this and you can learn it. But they're not trying to force you into it, because you can't get someone to do it if they don't want to. Now, we worship science in the same way, right? That's our new religion. And it's good. We need that moral framework. We need the answers. It's impossible to not be religious. You're always following some set of instructions. So when Andrew Huberman tells you these are the protocols you need to do to live a better life, you're not going to go read those studies yourself, right? You're going to have faith in the words that he said, because he's done the work and proven it. And so that's your new faith. That's what you put your faith into. But you don't. Andrew Huberman prays every day. You know, like the idea that they're opposites, that science and religion are somehow disagree, is ridiculous. Like, neuroscience is just religion explained more. So we need a blend of the two, because we're never going to have enough neuroscience studies to create the stories that we need to actually like pass them on. Nobody's going to listen to you talk about neuroscience on a podcast. Some people will, but people want stories, people want films, they want cinema, they want art. So that's what we need. I want you to take a moment and apply this same test that I always talk about. Would you give this to a hunter gatherer? Would it help them or would it destroy them? If you gave a tribe Wi Fi, they would immediately get addicted to porn and doom scrolling, right? We've literally seen this happen. They've done this. If you gave them AI that could answer any question or solve all their problems, what do you think would happen? They would stop hunting, right? They would stop teaching their children. They would stop telling stories around the fire. They would press that lever like monkeys until they died. So the question is not whether AI is useful, it's whether you're using it or it's using you. So I want you to think before you use AI. Does this make me more capable or more dependent, right? Am I replacing something that I should do myself, or am I replacing something that I can offload to someone else? If it helps you learn faster, it's a tool. But if it's skipping the thinking, it's the lever, right? I use AI for boilerplate stuff that's just, you know, like implementation. And if you try to use it for the hard stuff, you yourself are now replaceable. So you need to find the skills that cannot be replaced and the thinking that matters to you, because the thinking that matters for profit is going to be replaced. Do things the hard way sometimes on purpose, right? Write by hand or solve a problem without looking for help. Cook without a recipe. Learn to do things without the AI, because, yeah, maybe the food will taste better, but we're not here for good tasting food. Okay, we're here for the reward that you get from making something that tastes good. If you want good tasting food, you can go and eat shit all day. You can eat chocolate and see where it gets you. Like, you need the value underneath it. That we don't like poetry and writing and art and entertainment because it's entertainment. We like it because it's pointing to something higher. And that higher thing that it's pointing to is something that we need. So don't replace it, right? All I'm asking you, if you take one thing from this podcast, use AI all you want to try and make money and help you, but don't let it replace the art within you. Don't let it confuse you into thinking that art is something that you can replace with something concrete and granular like AI generated videos. Guard your boredom, right? You know that you have your best ideas in the shower or when you're out for a walk. Don't fill every silence with something. I've said this many times as well, but try sitting for just 20 minutes. Start with 5 minutes, just bored and let your mind wander. Because the second that you stop asking yourself, what should I do next? And you start asking like AI, what should I do next? Because it knows you well, right? Sometimes it'll know you really well. That's when you've lost it. And that's when you've lost yourself. It's when your identity has been replaced. The moment it feels like a relationship, you've crossed the line. So notice the AI companies trying to hijack that deep human need you have, and give it the friction that it needs there. Real relationships require vulnerability and compromise and risk of rejection. And AI has removed all that. That's why it's a yes man, right? You're absolutely right. That's what it says to me, 10 times a day. You're absolutely right. It's a yes man. You can even program it to be less of a yes man than you want. You can tell it don't be too supportive of me, and that it's still just doing what you tell it. So it's it's the pawn of social connection in that way, right? It's just giving you exactly what your subconscious mind thinks you want, but your conscious mind knows better. So override it when you can. Look for the moral framework that can help you use this tool. Because I don't know everything either. I'm still figuring this out as well. We all are. Don't be tricked into thinking that the answer is going to be out there somewhere. Keep doing hard things deliberately on purpose, right? Not because you have to, but because choosing difficulty is the thing that will keep you human and keep you from, living a life in captivity. Make things, make content, write things, um, create, don't consume. You can use AI if you need to learn, like to help you write and think. You can use it like a notepad, right? A smart notepad. But there's a difference between offloading your mental capacity to it and still thinking, right? The hero's journey isn't about someone else. It's a map of what happens when you yourself decide to grow. It's when you reject what's comfortable and you face the thing that you don't want to do. So if you don't feel like sitting and writing a poem, you can ask AI to do it for you. And in both cases, you're going to have a poem, but only in one did you experience the art that was required to create the poem. And that's the thing that we want. We want the journey, not the outcome. The person that loves the journey is always going to get further than the person that loves or thinks that they love the outcome that they will get. The day is never going to come when someone decides to do this for you as well, right? Like, no one's ever going to come and slap the phone out of your hand. No one's ever going to override it for you because most of them are following their unconscious as well. No, they're stuck in the matrix, as cliche as it sounds. You need to pay attention yourself. You need to look for the truth yourself. Read the stories, read the old stories, read the new studies, combine them and create your own moral framework for moving through the world safely. The messages that from everyone who came before you saying, we went through this experience and here's what we learned. Those are the guides that if you reject them, you're going to go to hell, right? That's the idea that they were trying to tell you is follow these things and you can live in heaven on earth. We've created tools, right? All this abundance around you, the safety that we have in our modern society. If you can tap into that hunter gatherer headspace, it's paradise, right? This is the world that they dreamed of, and we have everything that we could ever want. But if you don't use it properly, if you don't maintain it properly, and if you allow it to consume you, you will it's not paradise, and it will be worse than hell. It'll be worse than the life of following your instincts in the wild. We have a massive gap between the floor and ceiling of possibility because of all the tools that we've created. And so it's finding the instructions for these tools and not accepting them as normal that are going to lead you to heaven. I'm going to leave you with this, right? Every animal in a zoo has its needs met. It's got food, shelter, safety, and entertainment. And every single one of them, all those animals are broken. It's depression, aggression. This is all the things I talked about in the last episode. The only thing they don't have is a reason to be alive. And we are those animals, right? We've been building our own cage for 200 years, and AI is that last wall. It's the last thing. It's the wall that makes the cage so comfortable you never want to leave. It's the thing that's going to it's the thing that's going to have us end up completely plugged in 24/7, right? I've literally seen it. I've seen people think about it, right? How far off really are we from people that spend all of their free time outside of work in a VR headset with like watching other people's content and interacting with AI with fake people, right? Think about that for a second. How the fuck has that become a realistic thing that might actually happen? Like, how the fuck does that even exist in our heads as something that could be? And it is happening, right? You have to notice these insane things that are becoming normal and just do not let them in. Like, keep them out. Keep doing hard things so that these comfortable, easy things never encroach on your real life, on your purpose. Um, because the act of choosing difficulty is the thing that will keep you human. I'm gonna end this here. If you've got this far, thank you for listening. I'm sure that you already know about the community, all my socials, everything on there. I'm really trying to build something here. And it's thanks to people like you listening that I can do that. So once again, thank you. I'll be back next week. Leave your comments as well. I love reading the comments on everything. All the people that DM me as well. I still respond to everything when I can. If you want, if you definitely want a response, join the community and message me on there. I respond to everything one to one, and it's still free for now. So get in there quick. Uh, Thank you for listening. Goodbye.